In the garage today, let's tear into this '89 Mustang GT. Welcome back to the Auto Obsessive Garage. Chadwick with you again for another installment of Project Rich Running Pony. That is our 1989 Ford Mustang GT. On this episode, guys, we have a lot of serious work to do. We have to get the injectors out. I want to ship them off, get them cleaned, flow tested, make sure they're great since we are having the fueling issue of running way too rich with the vehicle. So to get to them, we're going to do some other stuff. There are a lot of gaskets that need to be replaced on this vehicle. So intake manifold's coming off and we're pulling both valve covers. While we're in there, we're going to do some more stuff like clean the MAFS, clean the air intake that hasn't been cleaned in at least 2 to 5 years, would be my guess. We'll also clean the throttle body since we're going to have that off the car. So a lot of stuff's going to come off the car and we have to do a lot of cleaning. So I'd say we should probably get in the garage, get some work done. Okay, we've completed the fuel pressure test and it's time to access our fuel injectors. We have to do this anyway because we're going to take the valve covers off. It's going to make everything a lot easier. Obviously, first things first, this frame brace, strut tower brace needs to come off. We're going to pull that off. Once we get the intake manifold out of the way, we have access to the fuel rail, all the injectors, and of course the valve covers, which we need to replace the gasket on those. So let's start disassembling. This is the time where you grab a nice cold beer, put some cool tunes on, and totally get into it. So. That took forever. With the bracket out of the way, it's time to remove the intake manifold. I've already taken off some of the bolts, but I just wanted to kind of give you guys an overview as you're doing this. You want to make sure you get all the bolts out. They are 1/2 inch bolts in this case. Want to make sure we catch all those. Also, any vacuum lines, you can see we removed the intake down here to get that separation. But all these vacuum lines need to come off. You've got your EGR on the back of the intake manifold right near the throttle body. 2 bolts hold that on. Now it does have a gasket here, so you're gonna need to replace that. You don't want a vacuum leak at your EGR. That should be all we need to do. And then of course we'll find some miscellaneous, usually it's from other vacuum hoses attached. So I don't, like I said, not super familiar with this platform. So as we get these bolts off and I try to remove the intake manifold, I'm sure I'll be hooked up on something and we'll disconnect at that point. So just be careful as you're doing it. But we gotta take this kind of stuff off, any kind of sensor connectors, just unclip the sensors. Mark them with tape if you're not familiar. And since we're removing a lot of bolts, go ahead and start putting them in baggies with labels. That's how we do it. We don't wanna lose bolts or lose hardware, put it all together and have an extra bag of hardware. Yeah, we've all been there. So go ahead and start doing all that and we're gonna get this intake manifold freed up and ready to be removed. On second thought, I was gonna leave the throttle body attached, but now I think I am going to remove it. The gasket kind of looks old and crushed, and who knows how long it's been on there. So let's just pull the throttle body off, and we'll replace that gasket while we're at it. So whoever was in here last used a lot of blue RTV gasket maker to hold the intake manifold on, so it was down pretty tough. He kept the old intake manifold gasket on there and just used RTV. These are the shortcuts that'll kill you guys. Okay, I gotta find out what, I think I got some stuff attached back here. Whenever I try to remove an intake manifold gasket, this happens. Alright, so besides this old gasket being reused, which is unfortunate, you do have a couple vacuum lines on here you have to address. Alright, there's this one line here. And our intake manifold should come right off now. There we go, Cobra manifold is off. To get the fuel rails loosened up, there's 4 5/16 inch bolts. With the rails loosened up, you should be able to pop the injectors off. you're gonna get a little bit of fuel leakage, so grab some shop rags. All right, all the fuel injectors are out. Time to ship them off to get flow tested, potentially cleaned, and see if they are all operating correctly. Next, we're going to remove these valve covers since they are leaking quite horribly. It is a Trick Flow aftermarket valve cover. It looks like it's all hex bolts of the 3/16 variety. So we're going to go ahead and pull those all out and then remove these valve covers. Of course, check around, make sure you don't have any lines. Obviously, there's this line here. We've already disconnected from the intake manifold. We'll check the other side. Yeah, there's not really too much going on for like breather hoses or things like this in these valve covers, so that makes life a little easier for us. So we should be able to just, barring any surprises, just pull these bolts off and lift these valve covers right off. Then we can get to that gasket and replace it. We can't just put these dirty parts back in the car. You guys know how we roll here. So we're gonna take our time. Let's go ahead and clean out the intake manifold. It looks a little carbony inside, so we'll go ahead and do a thorough cleaning on that. The throttle body also pretty gnarly. We're gonna use some throttle body cleaner, get in there. And then obviously the valve covers, we'll just clean these up. They've just got some surface oil and dirt on them. So we'll clean all this up to get it ready to install back on the car. So let's get to work. I think we wanna start with this throttle body. Let me show you guys what it looks like. So this is not the stock 5.0 throttle body, it is the BBK unit. So it's a 65 millimeter. As you can see, it's, if you look in there, just a little gnarly. So we'll go ahead and clean this up. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're not going to a car show with this throttle body exposed. We just want to really get some of this old carbon and nasty stuff out of here. Since we have it out, why not, right? Oh, nice and shiny in there now. This backside's where it's funky. Looking nice and clean here too, so let's go ahead and clean the exterior up with some engine degreaser. Alright, throttle body. Like I said, this isn't car show quality, but wow. That is looking much cleaner. So, yes sir. Nice clean throttle body, ready to go back on our Mustang. All right, let's clean up these valve covers and really make them look nice. Can't complain, the valve cover's cleaned up great. Before we set upon cleaning this intake manifold, I just want to point out, here's the gasket. Looks like a really old intake manifold gasket. Clearly the last mechanic in there couldn't get it to seal, was having pretty bad vacuum leaks. So you can see all this blue RTV. Let me zoom in a little better. There we are. So you can see the blue RTV here all over the gasket in an attempt to kind of hold it in, maybe block some of those vacuum leaks. The issue with that is, there's so many issues with that. You always want to put a new gasket in when you're working, especially with intake manifolds, throttle bodies, anywhere where vacuum leaks would be absolutely critical to the car's performance. This is not acceptable. There is way too much RTV. You also see RTV here in the runners, and you don't want RTV being sucked down into the head of your engine. It's just not a good place for RTV. I do not support this kind of fix at all. Yeah, he might have sealed up some of these vacuum leaks, but this is just shoddy work. You just slap a new gasket on there, guys. That's all you do. So when we take this gasket off, we're gonna have to go ahead and clean this mating surface extremely well, make sure we get every bit of this RTV up. And I'm gonna also use brake cleaner and some other things to clean out the intake manifold. It does look a bit carbony in there, not too bad, I've seen way worse. So let's get this off of here and go ahead and clean this little intake manifold up. Here's the MAF for our Mustang. As you can see, it is an aftermarket walker unit. These are really good. It is paired for the stock injectors, so that's gonna be fine. Some things I wanna point out while we have it apart, of course I'm gonna clean the MAF. The MAF itself is this unit here, and when you look inside your intake section, you can see those little wires back there. Just really, there's a little connector, should be 2 wires. Now you wanna be careful when you're cleaning this, you don't wanna be too aggressive. I do use Q-tips if it's really dirty or some other kind of cotton swab to get in there and clean with the cleaner itself. You gotta be very careful when you're doing that. Now this one does look a bit dirty in there just because this is a cold air intake system and it just pulls in more dirt. Just the way the filter hadn't been cleaned for so long and had been dry, it wasn't filtering as well, so that means more dirt was being introduced to the MAF. So I'm gonna get in here, clean it up really nice. I don't know if I'm gonna Q-tip this because this is a newer one, but I will spray it down. You always wanna use like a approved mass airflow cleaner. You don't want to just spray like brake clean or anything in there, even though I think maybe that would work, but you don't want to use something too aggressive. So this sensor cleaner works great. So let's go ahead and clean this up. All right, our MAF is all cleaned out. We weren't having any MAF issues, especially if you're getting MAF related issues, you want to get in there and actually thoroughly clean it, but we should be good to go. There's no reason not to give it a little spritz with MAF cleaner while you have it out. Let's get this cold air intake out of the Mustang GT. 4 bolts, 10mm, holding it to the fender here. We're gonna go ahead and take that out. That filter definitely needs to be cleaned. I peeked down there and it is super dirty, so let's get it out of there. Go ahead and pop off the MAF here. And then your air filter should be able to squeeze through that hole. What was I think? A hose, and then we're gonna have to drop it through the bumper, I believe. Should fit through. See? Okay, as you can see, yeah, we are packed with dirt, all kinds of other stuff. It's pretty crusty looking. All right, let's clean her up. All right, we've got the air filter separated from the intake pipe. What we're gonna do is classic K&N recharger kit where we're going to clean this filter thoroughly with the cleaner, then we'll rinse it out and use the oil to oil it up. After allowing the cleaner to sit for about 10 minutes, we're going to go ahead and rinse it out. You clean it from the inside out of the filter and you don't use high pressure. So don't use a pressure washer for this, guys. Just simply rinse out all the cleaning solution. Now we're gonna set this someplace to dry thoroughly before we apply the oil to the filter. The filter's gotta be completely dry before you oil it. So that'll be our next step. Let's let this bad boy dry. With the filter completely clean now and dried out, we're gonna go ahead and use the actual oil to oil it. Now this oil is super important for a couple reasons. The filter by itself is not gonna catch a lot of stuff, the smaller dust particles, things like that. So you need some kind of oil to kind of ensnare that stuff. On top of that, you don't want to over oil it. And you definitely don't want to throw this thing nice dripping oily back into the car and hook it all up because you can really damage your MAF doing that. I've seen that a few times. Basically just follow the instructions and common sense. So let's give this a light coating of oil all around it, let that kind of wick up into the material, and then we're good. This thing's gonna breathe a lot better. Our 5.0 is gonna be a happy little V8. So let's oil this bad boy. We're gonna go ahead and let that soak up like I said, and then we'll install it back on our Mustang GT.